honor to lead off this conference for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I bootstrapped 3 companies, and sold 2 of them, by the way. And so I feel a real kinship to everybody in this room. I know exactly what you're going through. I've gone through that, all the horrible parts and the good parts, like getting that first sale. Oh my God, so great. I still have a $5 bill for my first sale, which I actually had I had a $5 bill for the sale, which is pretty cool, framed in my office. I really get it, I love it. Obviously, everything I'm gonna talk about today is specifically for this, and I have walked the walk of all the things that I'm gonna talk about today, so hopefully we'll be able to take away some actionable stuff as well as some inspirational stuff from it. And the second thing is that the first talk of a conference often helps set the mood or even a theme or an undercurrent that ends up propagating through other things that you hear. And so again, it's an honor to sort of have that slot to do that. And I think it's lovely that Rob and Mike picked honesty as the thing that might turn into an undercurrent for this conference, and that's nice too. So hopefully I can live up to that. So I want to talk about honesty in business and specifically how I think it will make you more money. I'm not interested in whether it's ethical or moral. It may be, probably is, but I don't care. For the next hour, I don't care at all. Just want to know if it's going to make you more money or not, and I want to present to you a case. So this is a jar of Smucker's line of simply 100% fruit spread. And everyone's laughing already. It's strawberry flavor. For anybody that was not at Business of Software last year, what percentage of this jar do you think is strawberries? 20? 12? You guys are so pessimistic. 0? Man, not even a seed that could get in your teeth? So the answer is 30% of it is strawberries. And the rest of it is stuff like apple juice and grape juice, lemon juice, pectin. And because that shit doesn't taste like strawberries, they have to add natural flavors for it to then taste like strawberries again. Now, who is surprised and shocked that this thing only has 30% strawberries? Anybody shocked? The room's spinning, I can't believe it. No? That's interesting to me, that in marketing, in sales, in your website, on social media, lying is just so common that we just take it for granted. We're going to be lied to all the time, and we're just not surprised. And it doesn't shock us, and we don't care, and we just sort of accept and move on. And so, again, the question is whether this makes Smucker's more money or not. It probably does. In this particular case, this kind of foolery probably makes more money. But this points out something interesting. If you decided to be exactly the opposite, if you decided to be brutally, horribly honest all the time in your business, you would stand out. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad yet, but you would definitely stand out. You'd be different. You'd have some kind of competitive differentiation, which, as we all know, in any business, and especially a smaller one, is really critical. It would be a differentiator because it's so prevalent that it doesn't exist. So it's an interesting question. Would that differentiator also be valuable in terms of getting you customers and money? Here's another fun one. What do all these countries have in common? They're not republics, right? They're not democratic, they're not run by the people, none of that, right? Now this is really interesting to me because, again, like I'm sure no one here is shocked that North Korea is in fact not a democratic republic, right? So what does it mean that they're titling themselves this? What is the message they're connoting? They're certainly not succeeding in their goal of fooling you that they're a democracy, right? That there's no benefit there. So all they're doing is saying, I will lie even when it's obvious that I'm lying. That's the only thing that's been established, really, by this. And so that means when I'm not sure whether you're lying or not, or if I'm not sure of the facts, then I will not believe you. You've established that we don't have a trust relationship at all. And my contention is that most websites are actually a whole lot like this, and maybe even the Smucker's thing. And again, I wonder if that helps. So for example, here's a website that I found. They do internet marketing, and they say stuff like, we're the leading provider of internet marketing and promotion services. The leading provider. Here they are. Can't you tell? It looks like the leading provider. Never mind, they haven't updated their website since 2002. That's okay. The internet has not changed that much in the last 10 years. I'm sure marketing works exactly the same way. It's ridiculous. So again, Okay, but if we got a lot of A/B testers in here. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of talks about metrics and A/B testing and why Peldy hates that or whatever. But still, like maybe that works. Maybe this is a good idea. Maybe this is making the money. But maybe this is like the People's Republic of North Korea, and maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this is hurting your credibility and hurting your sales. So this is a lot of maybes. So I'd like to, the whole rest of the time, give you actual data, a little bit of stories, but data about all this stuff so that you can see what you think about it. And I want to start with social media because if there's any place in which people say that they value things like honesty and whatnot, is here, right? The secret of social media, I guess Dan Martell, I hope I don't steal his thunder by telling you that the secret is you got to be honest, you got to be authentic, you got to be, right? And all those kind of words, you got to be human, even though humans are not really those things most of the time, right? But that's what they say, and a lot of people will tell you to do this. Here's Gary Vee, obviously he's a big proponent of being honest. He's a proponent of big companies being honest. He's got 1 million Twitter followers. They all agree that you should be honest too, and so hopefully they would be honest, but are they? So I did a sentiment analysis on Gary Vee's followers about how they feel about Gary Vee and whether they say happy things or not happy things to him. And so I discovered that only 9% of the things that are ever said to Gary Vee are in any way negative. And then I went and looked at those tweets to see what they were. And they were stuff like this, good damn or bad damn. Okay, that's not really negative. Gary Vee, it's my own fault for, I don't know, some self-deprecating thing, so that's not really negative. And this is actually saying Gary Vee's awesome because his book is doing better than Tim Ferriss, so that's not really negative either. And this guy says, accidentally just butt-dialed Gary Vee, sorry dude, which is really just him going, I have his phone number, guys, everybody. Did you know that? So actually what I found when I looked through all the tweets is that in fact none of them, 0 of them were negative. Of course I was looking at a certain block of something like 1,000, right? And 0 of them were negative. And I've seen this kind of chart before, maybe you have too. I figure we're in the Hard Rock so I could make a rock and roll reference. Okay. So then I looked at my own Twitter following. Same thing. I didn't even need to look through the tweets because the tool already said there was 100% positive. In other words, bullshit. Right? No one's arguing, no one has anything bad to say, etc. It's not honest. The very thing that everyone says you have to be clearly is not that. I realize this is only one weird dimension, but the point is that it's not true. And if you look at the people who are celebrities on Twitter, obviously there's many, one of the things I find is that they have a very strong opinion and they're not afraid to say it and they're not afraid to stick with it. All these people do it. I was talking with James Altucher about his blog and he said that he decided in November of 2010 to start only telling the truth on his blog all the time. And he literally in the span of a couple of months went from 10,000 people reading it a day to 100,000 in a span of a couple of months because he decided to tell the truth. Now, it's not true that you tell the truth so magically you're a celebrity. Obviously, that's not true. But it is true, those Twitter followers are right that to be successful in social media, one of the components is a lot of honesty, and yet they don't do it. And yet it's still all smuckers and other stuff. The North Korean language, to me, is still a language on websites, on social media and stuff, even though it's clear, and everyone even says that that's not what you should do. So let me give you a very particular example, which many of you may already have on your website or are contemplating, which is the magical competitive analysis chart. Wait, we're in Hard Rock, so rock and roll quotes, right? Right? So your product is awesome, it has all the check marks next to all the features, and the other ones are sorely lacking because they're so crappy. And they all look like this. And what's interesting about these is it's not a direct lie. It's not like saying 100% fruit when it's not. It's a different kind of more subtle lie. Here's X Compare Pro, it has all these features. I believe them. That's not a lie, probably, that they have all those features. But I know Araxis merged there on the right side that has only 2 check marks. I know they have 8 billion features. It would go on and on if you could list them. So what this is a lie by omission, right? And you know the lie by omission is twice the lie. Maybe you've heard that before. It's still a lie, of course. And again, the question is, does it work? Which I'd like to answer. They all kind of look like this. This one's horizontal. That's really different. This one's different because the check marks are red instead of green, so that's nice. They're reaching out. I like this one because it's a lice treatment, and one of the big advantages is that it's non-flammable. So I guess if you put your cigarettes out on your kid's head a lot, that would be useful. I also like this last one. Lice are not resistant to the formula. Like, like, as opposed to what? Like, it's a formula. Unfortunately, it's water, so and they don't care. Like, anyway, so and this one's so long I can't even fit it on a slide. This is typical, right? So again, though, I keep asking, is it worth it? Is this a good idea? So let's get to some actual data. Is this helping? Does this sell these products, or actually is it holding back sales? There was an experiment done with this, because we actually know about products that say good and bad things, or that display good and bad things on the page. It's really prevalent now in the form of reviews, consumer reviews, right? They say bad and good things. It's like having a comparison chart that in fact lists good and bad things at the same time. So it's an interesting question. If you do that, what happens? Now it's clear that sometimes reviews will increase sales. I mean, after all, look at this shirt. You might be thinking to yourself, is this shirt hideously ugly or really awesome? Unfortunately, Amazon has consumer reviews, and so you can clearly see that it is awesome. There's one review here where the person said, unfortunately, I already had a picture of this tattooed on my chest, but the shirt comes in handy in cold weather. Another one said, my child was born without bones, and I put this shirt on him, and he grew bones. That's a good review. Actually, what I think is funny is that 148 people hated it. They're like, no, this is terrible. That's great. And 40 people were 2-star. You know, I don't hate it, but I don't know how you can be on the fence about it, but 40 were. But obviously, a more serious example, like here's a quote that was on our company website for a while. They solved problems, my site's faster, I made more money. Like this, obviously, quotes like this are going to sell more stuff, we know that. But then there's the other side of customer reviews, which surely will hinder the sale of products, right? This is the scary part. Like here's a product, this is a stereo system, and if you search for the stereo system on Google, which I was doing, this review comes up before the product's own website. So that's really scary, right? And so this guy had some stuff, like he listed pros about it. And then he gets into stuff like this was the worst pile of junk, and he describes all this stuff. He describes how he'd put a pipe on it and send it back, and then he's like, but if the government's watching, I wouldn't really do it, I'm joking, and like all this bizarre rant. And then he has some advice for people who are still considering making this purchase. So obviously, some reviews will hinder sales. And so the question is, on the balance, would telling the truth on both sides be better? And so there is actually a lot of experiments, and in particular, Canon camera of all companies did it. You'd think it would be some little startup, some 37 signals thing where they tried something crazy that everyone said wouldn't work or whatever. But actually, Canon decided to do this very experiment and put reviews on their site, and it was actually an experiment. Rare time that you have an experiment in the field with real data, right? So it's really cool to see what happened. So here's what they did. They said, all right, here's whatever the sales were already from their online sales of various cameras, some of which they would later find to be highly rated and others would be lower rated. Of course, they wouldn't know at first. So then they put up the reviews, and then they were able to say, like, oh, okay, so generally, now we know the cameras that were high rated and low rated, and anyway, this is the revenue before we put up the reviews. Now you can look at what happened. And so it's not surprising to see that the highly rated cameras, the sales doubled, which is awesome, and obviously a good reason to put testimonials up on a website. So there's a little tip. Testimonials are good. You knew that, but it's nice to see data. So the question is, how much would the sales of the other side go down, and would it be good in balance? And so here's what happened. The sales of the low-rated cameras went up almost the same amount as the highly rated cameras. And they said, how in the world can this happen? And so they went and did a study. But I experienced what they found in the study myself. So I want to tell you it from my point of view. This is my daughter, Abby. And she's playing here with, oh, by the way, so I was speaking a couple years ago at a conference, and I had a picture of my baby there. And I was going like, I don't know, 12th in the conference. And so I was waiting, and it seemed like every presentation had a picture of their kid in it. And so somebody Twittered on the hashtag, why are all these geeks putting pictures of their kids in the slide deck? Are they trying to prove they're not virgins? And I had a different presentation, but it still had my kid in it, and I left it in and called her out on it when I was up on stage. Anyway, so here she is putting her, her spaceship man on the toilet, but she thinks it's a bed, that's okay, in the, in the spaceship. And of course she puts the toys in the spaceship and she closes the door, and then it's a spaceship, so she picks up like this and goes, zzz, right? Like it's a spaceship. And when she does that, the door opens by itself, it doesn't stay closed, it hits her in the head and all the toys fall out. So when we saw this the first time, we're like, oh man, that sucks. And Momo, who bought her because my wife's from Baton Rouge, so it's Momo, but Momo, who bought her the spaceship, said, yeah, it does that. Like, what do you mean, yeah, it has a design flaw, like, why, what's up with that? And she said, well, I read the reviews, and everyone said the door opened by itself, and it was kind of annoying, but that the rest of it was really cool, and the sounds were nice, and so it was the best thing I could find for under $40. And that is why the sales of the low-end products go up. Because when you buy a cheaper product, of course, it has various things that are not as good about it. And everyone expects that. That's not weird. But you don't know what those things are. And when you know that the problem is that the door opens, but otherwise it's really good, then you buy the thing instead of shopping around or trying to find other information. You just make the purchase decision. And with Canon, it's the same. This camera on the left is a 30th of the cost of the camera on the right. They have a big range, and obviously there's going to be all kinds of stuff different. No kidding. So when you know the trade-offs you're going to get, you're okay making them and making the purchase decision anyway. So putting those negative things up on the website helps people decide to buy anyway. Another interesting way to measure this effect, that was sales, that was revenue. But it's also interesting to see profits. Obviously profits went up because sales went up. But the profits for the low-rated products went up even more. Profits, which of course is more interesting anyway than revenue, isn't it? And that's because returns of the products went down 20%. And the returns went down for the same reason. Because if I know the door opens, then I don't return it because the door opens, right? Like I knew that, so I don't return it. And even in software, returns are really expensive. And this is why returns are expensive for Canon, but it's true it's definitely true of software too. Don't ever think it's not. But out of a $100 sale, Canon's bottom line profit is about 10%. So $90 of the $10 goes right back out the door, and they make $10 when they sell a $100 camera. As soon as it gets returned, the rule of thumb is you've lost all of your money on the camera. Because although maybe you can pack it up and fix something and send it back out, that all costs money. You're shipping stuff around. Some of them are broken and you lost it. Like the general rule of thumb is you've lost all that money. So now they're in the hole by $90. So that means they have to sell 10 more cameras to make up for the $90 and just get back to where they were in the first place when the first one was sold. One return costs them 10 more cameras before they can start making a profit again. It's ridiculous. So if you can get the returns down a little, it helps a lot in the bottom line. And the same thing is true in software. It's true that you don't have this hardware costs, but there's all that tech support and the crap they say about you on Twitter. And also, returns just simply indicate that someone thought you were the right choice and wasn't. They wasted time. They obviously wasted your time. And it's just a bad sign that there was a bad fit. And obviously, that costs you money. And this was not a one-time thing. This experiment was run by a company in Austin called Bizarre Voice, and they did it with 500 companies over the course of something like 7 years, and always found the same thing. You always made more money on products, and profits always went up more. Every single time on every kind of product that you can imagine. It is a universal rule that if you say the good and the bad, you sell more, and you make more profit. I don't know why that slide didn't come out. Try again. There. There's a guy named Eric Sink who has a blog that he doesn't really write anymore. But in I guess it was early 2000s when I was doing Smart Bear, it was my Bible of marketing, so I highly recommend it anyway, his older stuff. And he has a saying which is that conferences are like sex in that when it's good, it's really, really good. And when it's bad, it's still pretty good. And so I say also telling the truth in advertising is the same. It's still good. Even when you say bad things, it's still good to do. So on the competitive analysis chart, I think this is the wrong chart. I think maybe not even a chart is necessary. One of the things that I like doing is instead of trying to compare yourself against the competition, which of course brings them up also, which you may not want to do even, instead you could just decide on the things that you particularly are good at, that you uniquely do better than them, and just say, we're the best at the following 3 things. And you just go blank, blank, blank. Because that way, you're not saying anything negative about them per se. You were just highlighting the things good about you. But you can also say what you're bad for. You can say things like, hey, like in our case, it's WordPress hosting. If you don't have a lot of visitors and you don't care that much about your WordPress blog, you shouldn't come to us because you're going to spend more money than you need to, and there's no reason to do that. Just go to WordPress.com or go to shared hosting. You should not use us if you're in this category. And if you're CNN.com, you also should not use this. You should go to Automatic VIP and use them. In other words, if you literally say, yeah, we're no good for you, you need to go over here, then that's it. But if you're in this category, you're my boy. Like that is a nice way of doing it. And of course, it's not just the feature comparison chart, it's all this. And the company about page is maybe one of the worst places where this happens. Here's one from Web Methods. Web Methods provides business integration software to integrate. I'm not going to read it. It's hideous, and it's common, right? This is typically what you find. I'm the leading provider of this, or a keyword, buzzword thing that investors maybe put, or that you think your big customers want to see because it makes you look big or something like that. This is common. But I want to pick on Peldy because it seems like I always pick on Peldy, especially when he's here. But this is what Peldy had on his about page at Balsamiq. Everyone here probably knows Balsamiq. Well, now Balsamiq is a big multinational enterprise. But back when it was just Peldy, this is what his company page looked like. There he is. It says, hello. Yeah, I'm one dude. That's honest. That's not trying to look too big. That's all that, right? And then it's worse. Then he goes, I know it sounds iffy. His company page says it sounds iffy. That's the word he used, iffy. How can one guy support a whole software company? Well, it remains to be seen. I'm not sure I can, in other words. I know it's iffy. You're right. Of course, this was his revenue in the first year. That's $1 million over there. And of course, being honest doesn't mean you'll make $1 million, right? Like, that's not the lesson. The lesson is that being honest does not stop sales, as I think a lot of marketing people would not have you say on your homepage that you're one person, or salespeople. Obviously, it does not hinder sales. I would say that that Peldy being one human being and blogging about what was going on and all this stuff was part of what drove people to love the product and put up with whatever faults it had, because all products have faults forever, and especially at the beginning of their lifespans. And I think you earn forgiveness. In fact, hello. In fact, this is, I think, the central message of this whole thing, is that when you're honest and proactively honest, like Peldy doesn't just answer the phone, and if asked how many people are at the company, he says one. No. He volunteers that there is only one person. He pushes out that honesty into your face, just like the consumer reviews too. When you're proactively honest, here's all the good stuff and the bad stuff, here's what's really going on, then you earn the believability when it's stuff like, so you should trust me that I'll take care of you, so you should trust me that I'll fix the bugs, so you should trust me that this product works like I say it's going to work. Exactly the opposite of North Korea, that establishes that you can't trust anything that they say. This does just the opposite. When you admit the problems or admit things that could be a negative, you earn the ability to then say happy things, and people believe you because you've already said, look, here's my warts and weird stuff, but I have a nice ass. And then they'll go, okay, right. So I want to give you a very specific example of this thing with data, so you can see what I mean. So this is our short-term cancellation rate, meaning if someone signs up for, this is from last year, but when someone signs up for our service, do they cancel within 30 days? And this is a trailing 30-day number. So you can see it generally something like 6 to 8 people, 6 to 8%, cancel within the first 30 days. Okay. And suddenly there's this mountain of cancellations. Oh no, what happened? So what happened was we had an hour of downtime right here. And just complete downtime. So imagine you're a new customer signing up for a hosting company and then they're down for an hour. Obviously, a lot of people would just quit because that's ridiculous. So I'm surprised it's not more than 20%. What we did is, So that was bad. But as you can see, it came back down because, of course, then there's newer people and they don't remember that. They didn't know that. They weren't here when that happened, so they didn't know it. So, of course, it levels back out. But right here, we had a 12-hour outage. 12 hours, all day gone. And look what happened to the cancellation rate. Nothing. Whatever we did different, this should be 12 times worse, or at least just as worse. Whatever we did over there mitigated 100% of the problem that we created over here. 100%. And the difference is how we handled the situation. Here, we thought, well, maybe people won't notice. A lot of people don't go to their blog. We'll just see if we can fix it really fast. We don't really want to admit that there's a problem. And so we just kind of didn't say anything. And of course, then there were problems, and we kind of said stuff like, well, do you guys even know it's down? Because, right, how would they know whether we knew? Over here, we did just the opposite. When we started having problems, we started tweeting and putting on our status blog right away. This is happening, this is happening. Now, both of these, by the way, were not our fault, in the sense that both of these were complete data center-wide outages. So in that sense, it was like, well, anyone that was in that data center, all of those people were out. And so in that sense, it's not something we did. But it doesn't matter, right? It's still our customers, and their sites are still down, so who cares? But because we proactively talked about every problem as it came out, it mitigated 100% of people's negative opinion about what was going on. 100%. And so again, yet another example that when, like reviews, like the way you treat customers, customer service, so forth, when you admit even the worst things, it comes back to you. And some people feel like, yeah, but I'm going to turn people away. If I say I'm one guy in the site, or in the whole company, and they're calling from Lockheed Martin, then they're going to go, oh my God, just hang up the phone and not want to work with me because I'm too small. And what I would say to that is, right, and they don't want to work with you because you're too small. And if you try to pretend like you're not too small, Lockheed Martin's going to find out because you're not going to act like what they want you to act like. And then you still lost the sale, except now the relationship is soured on top of that. And you're not going to be successful doing that in any case. And so, if someone didn't want to use a design mockup tool because it was only Peldy working on it, well, then they shouldn't work on it. Because you know what? The tool's going to be like a tool that only one person's working on. It's going to develop features at that rate. They're going to answer tech support email at that rate in Italy and not necessarily on California time. That is what, in fact, is going to happen. If you set up those expectations because you were honest about what's going to happen, then they either accept them, like the door opening in the toy, and then we're fine, and they don't care about all that stuff, or they don't accept them, but they weren't going to accept them anyways. And so if Peldy just hadn't said anything, they would just have had a bad experience. And so I don't think that hiding the truth actually buys you anything there. So the obvious thing to do is go look up that old Peldy page and copy it because it worked, right? It worked for Peldy, so copy it. And unfortunately, that doesn't work either. That doesn't work either, to just copy something like that works. And this is why it doesn't work. So this is Blake Mykowski. Blake was traveling in the poor portions of Argentina, and he saw that the children had no shoes. Now, this is a problem for two reasons. The first is that if you have no shoes, then your feet get punctures, and then you contract disease and parasites all the time, and you're sick. The second reason is that if you have no shoes, then you can't go to school because you can't travel long distances. Because imagine, if you don't have shoes, you certainly don't have a car. And if you can't go to school, then you can't educate yourself outside of the level of the community around you. And if you can't get educated, then it's very unlikely that you're going to ever change the situation that you're in. So not having shoes is a really big problem. And so Blake decided, I'm making a shoe company called Tom's. There's the shoes. And every time you buy a pair of Tom's, they give a pair to a child. And I don't mean they ship one somewhere. They physically give one to a kid. This is the logo. It's an Argentinian flag. It says Tom's. There's the shoes again. There's Blake giving shoes to kids. They've given millions and millions of shoes to kids now. This is marketing. This is sales and marketing. It's the best kind because it's the kind we like and we want, and it's true, but it's still marketing. It's still a way to sell shoes, right? It's good kind. Okay. And if you see good marketing things, a lot of times you copy it. So, in 2010, Skechers came out with Bob's. Buy Bob's, we'll give one to a kid. Those shoes look familiar. You can copy the way they looked, right? So Skechers put this up. And in 24 hours, there was such a backlash of anger to them that they took it down that quickly, 24 hours. But if you think about it, that's kind of weird. Like if you think about it in economic terms, that's weird. More kids get more shoes, right? Like if it was good that one person did it, isn't it good that, okay, another company's giving more shoes to more kids? What are you so angry about? What's the problem? And the problem is the only difference between these campaigns, as you can see, because everything is identical, right? The only difference between the campaign is that with Blake, it was an honest campaign. And with Skechers, this is what they did. Right? With Skechers, it was a trick because they copied it. So you don't copy Peldy, you don't copy the page, but you can copy the idea behind it, which is to be completely forthright about what you are, who you are, what you value, and so forth. On our page, for example, actually I'll show you this part of our page. So we have more of like a less kind of friendly and a little bit more sort of, oh, we're secure and big like a bank kind of a thing because it's more expensive and than our competitors, and we do try to offer more features and be like that. But we're proud of Austin, so we talk about we're from Austin, and we proudly host 0.0006% of the WordPress blogs on Earth, showing that we're humble but happy to be here. And then we say something that I don't think any other hosting company says, which is when you host with us, you're betting on us personally, so here we are. And then we list everybody in the company. And I think that's a nice way of putting it, especially in something where it can easily be an industry that is somewhat commoditized. Everyone's got servers and RAM and crap, and the WordPress works, and it's kind of, for the first approximation, it's all the same. And so for us saying like, yeah, so I mean, all the servers are the same in the first approximation, so it's us that you're betting on, and so we better tell you who we are exactly so you can decide if that's a good idea to bet on us. Another thing that's not on the slide is if you go to our careers page, we say these are the things that we value. And we literally just like list, here's what we do in these different circumstances. Here's what we do for customers, here's how far we go, and here's where we don't go that far. Here's where we decide that we're being abused by the customer. And we just say it on the website. And the idea is like, this is how we're going to try to treat you. We're going to hire people that want to do it this way. These are all things we're communicating by just putting it on the website, putting essentially our corporate culture on the website. That's a whole other subject, by the way, which I never realized how important the company culture is. To me, it's just like touchy-feely, like, it's a culture. And I know a lot of people here are going to be solo founders forever, but many of you have partners at least, or might hire some folks at some point. And I think I heard it best once that you're going to have a corporate culture. So the only question is whether you decide what it is, whether you hire to that standard, whether you act to that standard, and so on. That's the only question, whether you decide what it is or it just evolves. So we decided to decide what it is and put it on the website so our customers could see. And every time a customer sees that, we've gotten good feedback of like, I can't believe you said that. And like, I want to be at a company, if this is true, if this is how you act, I want to be at this company. And of course, the response is, you can hold us to that standard. That's why we put it on the website. Again, more putting it on the website. Now, there is a subtlety here because, okay, there's omissions like the comparison chart, but still, there's lots of truth, right? Like, there's thousands of pictures of me, but I picked one to be my avatar, not the other ones where I don't look, I think, as good, right? Like, I'm going to pick them. They're all true. I'm going to obviously select one that's convenient for me. And so, of course, there is presentation as opposed to, and that matters as well. And so I want to give you some very specific examples of doing that, especially in startups. But I want to start with some of this data from OkCupid, which is a free dating site that has lots of data, right? And they have a cool blog that you should totally see if you think this is cool. But on the subject of photos and picking the right one, I want to show you some data, because it matters. So, for example, this is how, if you're a dude and you want to get a date, what should you do in your photo? Because they have lots of data. So, for example, best thing you can have is an animal. Oh, he has a dog. Like, that's the best thing you can have. Second best is showing off muscles, although they noted that if you have muscles to show. So, okay. Worst is travels. No, we don't want to see wandering dude. That's not attractive. And just because we have to do both sides, to be fair. So for women, posing with an animal is the worst, just the opposite. Don't want to see you with your cats and stuff, not interested. That you would think like the best thing would be showing skin, showing cleavage, stuff like that. It's actually not, I think, surprising. The best thing by far is what they call the MySpace shot, which is where you hold the camera like she is, kind of up and at an angle and on top, and make one of these kind of photos. By far, most they get the most emails when they have that kind of photo. Weird, right? All the photos of you are true. So it is useful to have data about which photos might be, if you're dating, But of course, same thing is true with your startup. There's ways of presenting it that are a lot better, that are not you lying. They're you using the truth to your advantage. So I want to give you some of those presentation things, specifically that I've used every time I was a solo founder or had just like one other employee and did stuff, and specifically what I say about it. Because again, it's always this principle that if you admit what is really happening, then you're allowed to get credit for other stuff that you and you alone can provide. Let me show you exactly what I mean. To me, like when it's just one person and you're making $1,000 a month, this is the kind of stuff you hear just all the goddamn time. The software's buggy. I called you at 2 a.m. on a Sunday and nobody answered. Yeah, your blog is too transparent and you don't reveal enough. Whatever, like just stuff. So here's exactly what I've done. So we're a hosting company. We don't have 24/7 support. You cannot pick up the phone and get someone all the time. We have an emergency number, so that's not 100% true. But we don't have 24/7 support. And so, of course, everyone says, oh, I want it, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that sort of thing. So here's what we say. You can go to a competitor and get 24/7 support. You can call Rackspace at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and you will absolutely get a human probably on the first ring because they're awesome. And that human being will tell you that the server is up and the network is up, and he can't help you because he's obviously not a WordPress expert. He's a guy that's awake at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. And so there's only a certain level of support you're going to get then, even from them. Now, if you call Rackspace on Tuesday at 2 p.m., you're going to get that same person. Now, in my company, you're not going to get that same person. You're going to get someone who's a true expert and can help all kinds of different stuff, even stuff that's outside of our purview technically. We're still going to try to help you. So it's true that we don't have, number one, got to tell the truth. So you're right. You're right. We're not going to answer the phone. And other people will. And that's awesome. And I'll just throw in, and they're less expensive. I don't know if that's true. I don't think that's true. But when you really need the help, see, now I get to go the other side and get the believability. But when you have a deep question, an army of L1 tech support people are not going to answer that deep question, and we are going to. That is what we do, is we answer those things. And guess what? People who are that good and everything don't generally, aren't going to be up at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Now, they still might say, yep, but I want someone to answer the phone. That's fine. Because once again, they're going to be disappointed with me if they go with me, and they need that, right? But I positioned it so that there is an advantage of going with me, a specific one that I can deliver on. By the way, we've never lost a customer on the basis of not having 24/7 support using that argument. Never. Here's another one that, of course, everybody hears. How could you not, right? I'll be your biggest customer, and I don't want to be. Again, the first thing is, you're right, you're going to be our biggest customer. The worst thing you can do is pretend like they're not your biggest customer, because you're going to screw it up, and you're not going to treat them the way that they might expect, and it won't be like a big company would treat them. It's not going to be like that, right? So you're right, you're going to be our biggest customer. And that means we might actually cause problems because we haven't done this before. Yikes, that's pretty much just saying like, yeah, we probably can't handle it. This is like Pelty's page, right? Yeah, you're right. Now that I think of it, you shouldn't do this. I've actually told that to people. I've actually said, yeah, you know what, you're really big. I would love to have this account, but you should really go with somebody else. Just tell them that. I guarantee you they won't hang up the phone. They'll go, really? And then they'll start arguing with you. Well, I don't know. But I liked what you guys said about this. Like, it's so weird to have, in a sales call sort of situation, for someone to say that they literally won't put down the phone. They'll want to keep talking. So you can't lose, really. But now you get to say other things. You get to say, look, here's the thing. You're right. You'll be our biggest customer. And for that reason, you will be so important to us that literally it will be our day and night, everybody at this company's job, to make this thing go as well as possible. And if there is a problem, we are all going to be tools down trying to fix it. We have to, because we have to have your account. We need this money. In fact, this company cannot ever grow and thrive unless we make customers like you successful. If we don't do this, we will literally not have a business. That's how important you are to us. And I guarantee you this, no other company will have that attitude towards this account. An account where you're the 100th biggest customer, they will not feel that way towards you, and we will. So that's already a nice one. Here's another one we say, which, again, you can also just take and copy. So we have a biggest customer right now. Somebody's our biggest customer, right? Basic math. So why don't I connect you with them? And you can see what it's like being our biggest customer. They came in, they faced exactly the dilemma you're facing, which you're very right to have a dilemma. So why don't you see why don't you ask them, how did we treat them? Did we have problems? How do we deal with those problems? Was it this kind of rock star white glove treatment that we just said we would give you or not? Just go talk to them directly. Here's their contact information, right? And again, we have never, ever, ever lost a customer, a biggest customer, with this argument. Not once. It works. I'll give you one more because I have time. Some of you may be thinking about doing enterprise sales calls, and many people will tell you that you can't do enterprise sales if you're not a salesman, don't have a sales force, don't have a Buick that you can drive around in, don't have a suit, and aren't funded and all this other kind of stuff. Not true. That's exactly what I did at Smart Bear. I was doing 5-figure deals while it was still just me. And we only had a handful of employees when we were doing 6-figure deals, and 0 salespeople for the first, well, until I sold it, we had 0 salespeople. So, I mean, we tried and they failed, and it was better not to. You can absolutely do it, but that's, I guess, a whole nother talk. But what's interesting is, of course, again, as I walk in there, again, what am I going to pretend like we are like IBM, walking in there with, you know, an SE and a sales guy and stuff? So since I'm not that, I just went completely the other way, completely honest and completely opposite that, because that's what we are, we're completely opposite that. They either want to be, they're happy that we're completely opposite that, or they're not happy. So I would go in there and say, hey, I know you guys are looking forward to 44 PowerPoint slides with our company mission statement and stuff like that, so I hate to disappoint you, but I don't have PowerPoint, I just have a demo. Is that okay if we just give you a demo and see if you like it? And, you know, everyone's, you know, oh my God, no PowerPoint? I like it already. You know, like, another thing I did in the realm of tech support is I would say, because I knew I would give them good tech support, right? And I know that other big companies that are in there, of course, won't have good tech support as a rule. So I knew that was going to be an advantage of mine. So the way I sort of use that is I would say, you know, when you're trialing this product, our tech support is part of what you should trial, right? That way, because if you like our tech support, you'll feel like you're being taken care of. And if you run into problems, you'll know that we can fix them, and so that'll be okay. So you should test our tech support. You should try them out and make sure that you're okay with that. One time when I said that, a guy in the back literally got out his wallet and slapped it on the table and said, I'm buying it now. And I, why? He's like, because if you're that honest about it and you're that obvious about it, then I know what's going to happen when I call tech support. It's going to be good. And anyway, I just like this attitude. You're just telling me what's going on. I like the attitude I'm in. It works even in a setting like an enterprise sales sort of situation where, again, traditionally that's not what you do. You dress up in a suit and you do the show, and it's a complete farce. But again, I argue to you again, this is why it works. This is why honesty works, because it's always a farce. It's always crap. And when you're not crap, people respond to that. They like it. They know intuitively that you're being that way, and it works. So I would say, as a micropreneur, you have certain advantages. And you have to bang on these advantages, because these are your advantages. You don't have more money than the competition. You don't have more employees than the competition. You don't have more funding than the competition. You don't have more attention than the competition. You're probably not as old, as a company, not as old as the competition, and so on. There's all kinds of things that you will not have as an advantage. So rather than pretending that maybe you're a bigger company, or saying this and that on the website to sort of try to mitigate that by pretending that maybe you're okay, I say you have competitive advantages, and by telling the truth about all of them, you can use them. And a lot more people than you might think are ready to get on that bandwagon and be okay with your limitations. So specifically, if you're trying to do a project with somebody, especially a larger company, one of the things you can do is take on risk that they can't take on. That your competitors can't take on. You can say, I'm going to do a special project for you, but you have to sign up for a year of service and ahead of time and all this kind of stuff. But you can take on the risk that project doesn't work out and they don't pay you. You can do that. Your competitors, who already have revenue streams and 30 employees to feed, cannot take on those kinds of risks anymore. You can. That's something you can do, so you should. Of course, you can also be faster, because companies get big, they can't do. You know that already. And you can think of interesting new ways to do the deal. It doesn't always have to be a price list and you do this. Maybe it's a custom job, maybe you get paid later, maybe in exchange for paying a lot of stuff ahead of time, they get a much lower rate. But that's good for you because you need to get funded that way. That's impossible for another company because they have cash flow to worry about, right? You don't have legacy code to maintain. Any kind of new software like that, yeah, it's buggy, but you also can do whatever you want because you're not beholden to 10,000 customers that expect it to be another way. So you can be more nimble that way. Now, you know these kinds of things that you can be nimble. What I'm saying is, it's not just that you could do that, it's that you must do it. These are your competitive advantages. You don't have many. These are what they are. So you must bang them on the head and use them because this is where you can completely win against the competition if the customer appreciates those particular things. And again, if they don't appreciate it, forget it anyway, right? And again, you can be all in. I've sort of described how about the biggest customer thing. You are all in. People love that. And you've heard, of course, a million times, people respond to people who are passionate and all that kind of stuff. You've heard that. But this is specifically how that manifests. By saying things, I used to say at Smart Bear, people would say something like, man, you guys are, I can't believe the founder's talking to me over tech support. And my go-to line was always like, well, if this doesn't work, we all have to go back to working at Sonic. And people thought that was hilarious. Like, no, really, if this doesn't work, right? And people like that when you again, just put that out there. They want you to succeed. It's sort of like a comedian being on stage, or even something like this. Like, you don't want the lecturer or the speaker to be embarrassed or awkward or whatever. You want them to be successful. You want them to be funny. The customer wants you and your little company to succeed. Most people do anyway. The kind of people that will be your first customers do. And finally, of course, I would argue that this being completely transparent and honest is something you can do because you can just choose to do it. And larger companies will just not do that. And in fact, forget larger companies, most people who could choose to do it will not do it. This can be a big competitive advantage, so I feel you must use it as a competitive advantage. So I want to pick apart what happens at that very moment where you tell the lie, because I think it's very interesting, and telling. So I would get on the phone at Smart Bear when it was just me, and they'd say, how many people are there? As they do, right? They ask shit like that. And it was just me, and I said, 3. And it's interesting to me what happened in this moment where I said 3. I obviously had to decide to say 3 because it's not the truth. So I had to decide to say 3 and not maybe 5. Maybe that's too big. Like, who even knows what I was what was unconsciously happening? It doesn't matter. I chose to say 3. So why? Why did I say 3? I think there's 2 reasons why we do things like this. I say we because I do it. I try not to anymore. Hopefully I haven't in the last few years. But I think we all, just sort of defensively, skew and do this kind of thing. So I don't think any of us are exempt from this. So the first reason I think we do it is to continue a lie that's already existing. In other words, if your website doesn't say that you're one person, it sort of implies there's a whole company behind this. You can't say that you're one person. It's sort of discontinuous and probably reveals that you're not telling the truth and is awkward at least, and maybe queers the whole deal right, because it's strange and not what they expected. So I think continuing a lie that you already have is one reason. But I think the main reason is fear. I think I don't want them to know it's just me. I want them to think that I'm bigger than I am. You could say better than I am. I'm more stable than I am, because I want the deal real bad. I don't want them to think anything that might make the deal go south. But I think that, even though I've done it a bunch, of course, in the past, I really do not think that that is, in fact, the way to win over those same people, and that it's not true that they feel that way. And I have even some interesting kind of data about that. This is a book by 2 women in New York who interviewed hundreds of women entrepreneurs to discover not only what made them successful in their business financially, but also personally. In other words, what was fulfilling or not fulfilling about what they did. What kinds of choices would they make, not just to make a bunch of money, but to be fulfilled in what they're doing, happy in what they're doing, integrating with their life and so on. Because that's really, I think, what most people in this room really want is not to make $1 billion or to make a Twitter, right? It's to do something that you're in control of. Yes, to make good money, hopefully more money than you'd make at a day job, but to do something fulfilling, something that you just need to do. It's just in your DNA that you have to go do these things, and you want to fulfill that and be happy doing that. And so anyway, so she interviewed these women, and in particular on this issue of being honest and upfront on these exact issues, like saying that there's one person instead of three and all of that sort of thing. Almost all of these entrepreneurs, it happens, were micropreneurs, it would be fair to say. And overwhelmingly, they said, every time we told these little white lies, it was bad. It came back to hurt us somehow. They found out, and then it was weird. I felt bad saying that in the first place. It was just weird. Like, I'm supposed to be doing something that's fulfilling and happy, and I'm lying. Why am I having to lie about the thing that's supposed to be my life's work? It's kind of weird. It causes consternation. And in particular, this was the point they drew out of it. They found that when they lied about those kind of things, it didn't help. Like, imagine, and this, again, absolutely happened. Imagine Lockheed Martin calling me. Lockheed Martin. There was probably a dozen people on their end of the conference line, a dozen, calling me, right? How many people are there? Now, and I exaggerate and say 3. Is that really that different? Now Lockheed Martin will do business with me because there's 3 instead of 1? When there's 12 people in that little cubicle over there? No, I'm teeny tiny. It doesn't change anything. There's almost no incremental benefit from that lie. Almost no, maybe none. But the downside is huge. When they find out it's not true, I've just lost all my credibility. So there's very little to gain, it seems, because you can't stretch it that far anyway. You can't pretend like you're that much bigger than you are. You can't get too far away or else it'll obviously collapse. So you're not helping yourself that much, and yet the downside is very large. So hopefully I've convinced you that this is sort of a universal truth across all kinds of things, whether it's like social media stuff, or big brands doing things to consumers, or bootstrap startups doing things, enterprise sales calls, and so forth. Then in all these different realms, tech support and sales, marketing, I have more stuff. I just don't have enough time to go into it. When I sold SmartBear, and you get into like negotiations about the term sheet and the valuation. What do you tell them? And do you go high and then hopefully you come down to a number? But what if you go high and just scare them off because it's ridiculous? And what if, and like there's this dance and this thing that you're supposed to do. And that's not at all how it went down with SmartBear. I literally sat down at Trudy's, which is a Tex-Mex restaurant in Austin, like a sort of middle-of-the-road kind of restaurant, and the guy who eventually ended up buying the company on behalf of Automated QA literally just said, like, you probably want to make have this much money in the bank, right? Yeah. Well, why don't we just make it so that you end up with that much money in the bank, however big that is, and we'll work out the details. Is that okay? And it is okay. And that's pretty much how that part went down. And 4 months later, I had sold the company for millions and millions of dollars. And by the way, that wasn't the whole thing. Obviously, I took it around and talked to a whole bunch of advisors and whatnot about this. In fact, 17 of them I know because I have index cards for each one, because I knew I'd forget what they all said. And all of them but one said, this is actually a really generous deal. It's good. Everything that's happening and da-da-da-da, like this is good. You should do it. Except for one. That's okay. So it was in fact not a bad thing, even though it wasn't, in that sense, it wasn't really negotiated. And anyone will tell you that selling a company from scratch in 4 months is almost unheard of, especially at that size anyway. Anywhere I can find that I'm honest, things tend to work well. And it's not even in just startups. So Howard Stern, obviously by far the most successful, popular radio star ever. And he's asked in interviews, of course, what's your secret? What's the thing? And he always says the same thing, and I don't think anybody really pays attention. He always says, this show's honest. That's what he always says. The difference is I'm honest. I just talk like a normal human, and we just talk about stuff that we think is interesting or funny. Now, of course, he's lewd and all this stuff. Not so much anymore, but of course, that's a lot of people think of him as, he's the shock jock. But think about actual shock jocks. Everybody that came after him, they all talk like this, and then they do stupid stuff, and none of them are that popular compared to him. Because it wasn't about the shocky part. It was that it was honest. It was that it was honest. And he'll tell you that. He always says that too. And I don't think people pay attention to that. Because even though this is, I think it's ubiquitous that people say that they want honesty. They say it on Twitter, and then they don't do it, right? But they say it, and Howard Stern says it, and everybody says it. Other speakers, I guarantee, have said on Twitter and blogs that this is the right way to go. And I think there's data from all over the place saying that, again, not worrying about whether it's right or not, that you'll just make more money and be happier, and it's kind of a weird thing to bring up at a business conference, but it's true, if you tell the truth. And so I guess the only question is whether you're going to do it and whether you're going to take it all the way. And it's hard. It's really hard to say one when you answer the phone. And it's hard to make that About Me page that just has you and about me and not about us and all that. It's hard to do that. Of course, nobody in this room would be here if you were afraid of doing hard things. So I don't think hard is a good enough excuse to not do it. Nevertheless, I still know that almost no one in this room will, in fact, go all the way and do this with their website, with their sales, with everything that they do, and really do it in the face of a customer, looking them in the face, on the phone, and so forth. And that is why, if you do it, if you actually decide to do it, I still feel, even in this room, you'll have a massive competitive advantage, and I believe that you'll make more money and be more successful. Thanks.